friends of Proudly Asian. I am Isabel, your host for the Proudly Asian podcast. I know, I know, it's been such a long time. And I think I'm sort of emotional that I am sitting right here at our usual home set for Proudly Asian and speaking to you all again. It's been such a long time and I have missed you all. I have missed being here, doing this, talking to you guys. But yeah, the good news is we're officially back. And for the first time of 2025, let me just officially welcome you back. Welcome back to Proudly Asian. And most importantly, this is our 100th episode. Welcome to episode 100 and a very belated Happy New Year to all of you. I know that it's been, again, I mean, I keep saying this, it's been such a long time. And also, one of the reasons why it took so long for me to get to this um, recording this special 100th episode is because I actually thought long and hard about what we should do for episode 100. And I had a lot of different ideas. Some of them could be really hard to execute. And in the end, I think because it's been such a long time since we last spoke to each other, so I thought it's just a good idea for us to just go back to the basics, sit down, you and me, walk down the memory lane because there are lots for us to catch up on. But before I give you some updates on what went on in the past couple of months, I just want to take this moment to say happy birthday to Proudly Asian. For those who are new here, on January 25th in 2022, that's when we released our first ever episode of Proudly Asian. It's been 3 years since we started Proudly Asian, the podcast. So yeah, it's a major milestone. You know, what really starts off as a podcast now, it is this beautiful, incredible community of our listeners, supporters, guests, and friends from around the world. And there are just so many amazing people who have been listening to the podcast, who have spoken on this podcast, or who have supported this podcast in many, many ways. And here I would just like to take this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you for being there for Proudly Asian. Thank you for listening, and thank you for coming to speak with us, sharing your stories. It's been such a beautiful journey. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, where have I been? It's such a long story, and there's also another story before the long story because right before I recorded this episode, there was just so many roadblocks. Like I basically freed up a weekend to record this episode, so I was actually planning to record this and release this episode a lot earlier than um, when it eventually happens. And I got really ill. And I just could not really sit up straight. And it took me quite a while to regain some strength. So finally, I'm here sitting right in front of you. Just know that it's been a journey coming back. So I'm not sure if you guys remember, for those who have been sticking around for at least a year, at the start of 2024, I said the year was going to be the year where Proudly Asian would take a more conscious approach, meaning that instead of going for the frequency and quantity, I wanted our content to be more fun, intentional, and speak to our mission. So, for those of you who know, you would know that Proudly Asian is one of the many projects that I am lucky enough to juggle in my life. So, sometimes the workload and also that quantity factor could risk making this not as fun for me. So in 2024, I really allowed myself to take it slow and take breaks when I need it. So this is why towards the end of the year it was a bit slower on the podcast front because the year got really busy. But to be really honest with you, sometimes taking longer breaks can make it even more challenging to get back to it because maybe it only applies to me. Let me know if you can relate to this, but sometimes after taking a long break, you really want whatever that you put out to the world to be worth your listeners' wait. And so that's when, a lot of times when I would come across roadblocks because I wanted the episode to be perfect. I wanted the conversations to be something that's really worth your time. So this is why it took me extra long to put together anything last year. As the last quarter of the year got really busy, I was also working through a creative block. Partly because I took a slightly longer break during the summer, and also partly because a lot of different aspects in my personal life ramped up and got really full on. And I just did not have enough time during a 24-hour day to allocate all of my attention to all of them. So it made it so difficult to get everything done. Isn't it one of life's struggles is to try to find time for everything, but you always find yourself being behind on something? There wasn't really a super juicy story behind the longer breaks that I took. But mostly it was just because my schedule got busy and I really wanted to take the time to make something that's worth your time. But I was still thankful that during the period of working through a creative block, I still managed to come up with something that's fun, like the Proudly Asian Collective playlist on Spotify, where we invited all of you from around the world and our guests to contribute at least one song that makes you feel proudly Asian, or even just a song by an Asian artist that deserves a lot more attention. And that was quite a fun exercise because a lot of you have been sending in your song lists, your suggestions, what to add to this collective Proudly Asian Spotify playlist. And the playlist is still very much live. I'm going to link that in the episode description. And if all of you still have any new songs to contribute, keep them coming. Our DMs are always open. And on Instagram, for those who have been following us on Instagram, you know that we have been quite active on putting out reels. I definitely have a love-hate relationship with reels. I know many people do as well. But yes, in the second half of last year, we started our Japan Instagram Reel series, and one video I filmed actually a year ago. Was it a year ago? Maybe almost 2 years ago by now. Which was basically the reel where I showed how Japanese people sort their rubbish, and it went viral. I think last time I checked, it's over 500,000 views already, and there were a lot of great discussions going on in the comment section because there are a lot of audiences, surprisingly from Europe, who are commenting on how they do recycling in their own countries, and maybe some of them were actually quite surprised about how complicated the recycling system is in Japan. So lots of great discussions going on in the comments. So feel free to check it out if you would like to learn a little bit about how people recycle in different countries. But yes, I filmed that reel mainly because I kind of like heard a lot of complaints from tourists in Japan about how it's so difficult to find a rubbish bin anywhere. And some of the tourists were also kind of confused about how like maybe the accommodation comes with a few bins. So I decided it might be a good idea to remove some of that mystery and sort of explain maybe why things are the way they are in Japan. And this is mainly because of the really strict recycling law in Japan that every resident and every business is required to follow. But I think one interesting observation that I made was that while the rules are complex and strict, there aren't super serious penalties for residents who fail to comply with the rules. But the main reason why the majority of the people do that is sort of because of that strong sense of community. Because Japanese people don't want to be seen as troublemakers for their neighbors. So, I mean, to maintain that kind of like sense of being part of a community, a neighborhood, everyone sort of just follows the very specific set of recycling rules in their communities. And I thought it was sort of fascinating. It also speaks to that cultural part of the conversation. But yes, definitely the reel going viral was sort of unexpected because I thought the topic was maybe relatively dry or not sexy, not IG friendly, and but I'm very thankful that it did go viral. It attracted the attention that it did so far, and it might actually be also a reminder for me that maybe sometimes what we think is right and not necessarily eye catching still has a place on social media. Now, a bit of recap for 2024. I definitely need to look at my notes. So, despite I intentionally took it slow in the second half of 2024, we still had a great year with a lot of firsts, milestones, and here's what I just noted down to maybe like quickly recap what an incredible year 2024 was for Proudly Asian. So, first of all, in 2024, we had quite a bit of food collaborations with restaurants, which kind of officially kicked off that Proudly Asian food Instagram Reel series. And we have a lot more places that we would like to show you. I mean, I myself would like to try out different cuisines as well. So definitely we'll keep doing that in 2025. And if you have any recommendations or where to go, what kind of cuisines to try, what dishes to try, please let us know. And speaking about our Proudly Asian food journey, one of the most unexpected collaborations of 2024 was when we were invited to be an ambassador for the global young chefs, young waiters, and young mixologist competition, which is basically an annual competition where young chefs, young waiters and young mixologists from around the world would compete for the world championship. We were invited to be an ambassador and got to witness firsthand within like a kitchen stadium type of setting some of these incredible culinary talents who come from Asia. So I always knew working in the F&B industry was tough, but getting to see the behind the scenes of it all just kind of made me respect all of the people who are currently working in the industry even more. I hope all the contestants will keep at it and continue to use their creativity and heritage to redefine F&B. What I love about F&B really is there's never just one take on a certain cuisine or dish. Every chef, every waiter, and every mixologist just brings their own unique cultures, stories to the table. And that is the most straightforward manifestation of the beauty of diversity. And another major milestone in 2024 was definitely our second anniversary, which we covered quite a lot in one of the previous episodes earlier last year. And we even made a vlog of the behind the scenes. So feel free to go check out our YouTube channel to see the BTS of Proudly Asian Turns 2's celebration party. But yes, it was a special moment being able to celebrate in a room full of Asian change makers, previous guests, listeners, and our supporters. So, yes, very grateful for the community that we have. And it will always be one of the most special moments in this Proudly Asian journey. And last year, we also started going a bit physical, meaning that we spoke on quite a number of panels and events about what we do at Proudly Asian and met a lot of you who told me that you are either already a listener before we met in person or that you are interested in listening to the show. There was even an event that I was at where Proudly Asian's logo was on the event backdrop. So basically, I was just kind of like checking out the backdrop and I asked this nice girl who happened to be taking a photo with the backdrop for help to take a photo with the backdrop. Of course, I just set a lot of backdrops. But when I started posting and pointing at the Proudly Asian logo, this girl basically screamed because she was like, oh my God, you are proudly Asian. And I was so shocked. I had to maybe spend a couple seconds to make sense of what happened. And she went on to tell me that she's a fellow listener herself and she's grateful for the work that we do highlighting ethnic minorities in Hong Kong. And it was honestly the sweetest moment because, first of all, I did not expect to meet a fellow listener at that particular moment. And it was just so nice to be able to interact with people who listen to the podcast. And yes, I would like to meet each and every one of you. I want to hear from your point of view, what the podcast means to you. It's just so precious every time I get to speak to you guys. So I'm really hoping that 2025 will be a year when I meet more of you from around the world. And then during the summer months, I was traveling for quite a bit and yes, continued meeting some of our past guests and listeners. So when I was in Bali, the team at Four Seasons Bali so kindly invited me to experience their takes on Balinese cuisine and cultures. So there I had a lovely spa day and even had a cooking class with one of our past guests, Chef Suta, who is a local Balinese and the head chef of Four Seasons Bali at Siam. And we did a number of reels about that. So for those of you who are curious about what dishes we cooked, I had the privilege to cook one of the hardest to find Balinese dishes during the cooking class. So if you're curious, you can also check out some of our previous reels. It was such a lovely and special experience. Once again, thank you, Four Seasons Hotel Bali team. Thank you so much for treating me like a princess. And then in the last quarter of 2024, it was a bit of a blur, to be honest. I had the busiest months out of all months, but also continued with some physical engagement like a workshop for business owners and content creators in Hong Kong. So we partnered with Women of Hong Kong and one of our past guests, who also happens to be a celebrity makeup artist, Yo-Yo, to deliver this interactive workshop for a diverse group of women who happen to be small business owners and mostly marketing professionals. Some of them dropped by because they were in the process of starting their own businesses. And yes, it was such a fun evening meeting a group of inspiring women, and they were just so passionate about learning storytelling and content creation to fulfill their own dreams. And then for the rest of the year, most of you who follow us on Instagram would know that I took a solo trip to Japan to attend a friend's wedding. And on that trip, I ventured alone to Izu in Japan just to see capybaras chilling in onsen, which was a dream of mine. It was on my Japan bucket list for the longest time. So it was quite a journey, and I was low-key hoarding food just in case I got lost in the wild and I would have to survive for 2 days before someone would rescue me. But in the end, it was a fun trip. I survived. I went back to Tokyo on the same day. No surviving in the wild for me. But yes, it was also a trip with no dull moments because I almost missed my Shinkansen as well. But all in all, it definitely was the first trip ever to Japan that I felt like I really went to Japan, because it's not really a Japan trip if you never got confused by their train systems. So it was nice. Yeah, I'm grateful to have made that journey. So a few weeks ago, when I was brainstorming for what to do for episode 100, I just thought it might be good for us to do an Ask Me Anything. So I opened a question submission box for all of you on Instagram, and some of you submitted some really funny questions. So I know we got more than 10, but I will have to maybe just pick a few of them to answer in the interest of time. Otherwise, this episode is going to be so long and I might lose you by now already. So yeah, keep listening. Don't leave. Stay with me. So let's check out what questions we got here. All right. Ooh. The first question that we got is, what's the most un-Asian thing about you? Oh, shoot. The most un-Asian thing about me, it's probably to do with food. Ooh, I do have one. I suck at using chopsticks. And my Chinese Cantonese friends really judge me for it. I think that's it. All right, second question. Wow. Oh my god, you are using my question against me. What does it mean to be proudly Asian to you, Isabel? Wow. I have to be very honest, before I started the Proudly Asian podcast, I would also struggle to answer this question. And after hosting 99 episodes of Proudly Asian, I would say that I was so lucky to be able to learn from a lot of our past guests, and also a lot of you, our listeners, who have talked to us over the years about what it means to be proudly Asian. I think my current response to this question is, because my response will change over the years, I'm certain, being proudly Asian is a journey. If you did not start off being proudly Asian, that is okay. If you're in the middle, in the process of trying to get there, that is also very okay. And the funny thing about this journey is that there isn't one destination. Wherever you're going to reach in the end of this journey, it might be more magical than you can ever imagine. And I do very much look forward to what that looks like eventually for myself personally. And but yes, what I would like to say is that just because we're born Asian, it does not mean we're born proudly Asian. I think our appreciation for cultures, our understanding for our heritage, anyone's heritage, any cultures out there, any languages out there, they have to be acquired, they have to be learned. And this is one of the main missions for Proudly Asian, is to show the world that it does not matter where you come from, what background you have, you can still appreciate a culture that's not yours. Or you can still get to know more about your own culture. Just because you're born into one culture, it does not make you the expert of that culture. You still have to put in the work to learn about it, to learn to appreciate it, and learn how you can improve it. But another important point I would like to point out is that being proudly Asian does not also mean 100% being positive about your own cultures. It's not really the mindset of like, my culture is so perfect, there's nothing wrong with it. Being proudly Asian also comes with that awareness, honesty, and just to acknowledge that maybe the culture that I come from, or just any culture, has their own flaws and there's work to be done. And maybe as the next generations of our ancestors, we can be the people who sort of break the barriers, break the chain, to sort of show things could be done differently. Things don't always have to be the same, just so we can have that, like, sense of safety. So it's very okay to make changes within our own heritage and cultures, and we can make our cultures more friendly for our future generations just by making the changes now. Okay, next question. Let's do something casual. My favorite podcast. Ooh. Which category? I mean, obviously I have different lists of favorite podcasts for different times of day. I think I have mentioned a lot of like Asian podcasts that I love and who also happen to be my good friends. So if you don't know about them yet, then where have you been? So I guess maybe I'll just mention one favorite podcast that I always go to, maybe when I'm not in the mind space for Proudly Asian, or maybe just in life when I'm washing the dishes. Maybe I just need a good laugh, or maybe I just need some noise in the background. I would say Conan's podcast. It's always fun, and I like Conan as a host because he's this really accomplished late night show host, of course, but he never takes himself too seriously. So this is why his content is good. Yes, I would say that's one of my favorite podcasts. Alright, moving on. What's a common misconception about Asians that you would love to debunk? Oh my goodness. Lots of misconceptions that we would still like to debunk. But I guess maybe one main misconception is that thinking that all Asians are the same. Because not all Asians are the same, first of all. There are a lot of countries, cultures, languages spoken just in Asia. Not to mention, there are different Asian diasporas who are in Africa, North America, South America, Europe, Australia, basically just everywhere, and they all sort of form their own different sets of cultures, subcultures, and communication styles and languages. And so to think that all Asians are the same, it's basically saying all humans are the same. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Okay, let's do some fun questions here. If you could only eat one Asian dish for the rest of your life, what would that be? Oh, it's a tough one. Why do you do this to me? I love Asian food. There's so many cuisines, so one Asian dish. Oh my goodness. I would say hot pot. You know why? Because hot pot could come in many different styles. Every Asian cuisine has their own version of hot pot. For example, like shabu shabu in Japan, Taiwanese hot pot, Hong Kong style hot pot, Sichuan hot pot in China. Cambodia has their own hot pot, Yao Han. I'm pretty sure Thailand has their own hot pot as well. So yeah, if I choose hot pot, that means I can still have hot pot of different styles, right? So yeah, I'm gonna go for hot pot. I'm so cheating. Okay, next question. I do want some hot pot because it's cold. What are some of the biggest challenges Asians still face in global media and business? Ooh, this is a very serious one. Well, the number one challenge is obviously the challenge that has been around for the longest time, which is representation of the communities. I say communities because obviously it's great to have some Asian representation in major blockbusters, award-winning titles in the past few years on major global stages like the Oscars. But still, I would argue that those projects probably cover a very small amount of Asian communities that exist around the world. For now, a lot of you would know or have a certain understanding about the Asian American experience, but what about the Asian experience in Europe? What about the Asian experience in Africa? What about the Asian experience in South America? What about the Asian experience in Asia? I shouldn't even say the Asian experience in Asia because there are so many Asian experiences in Asia across different countries. And what about an Asian person coming from an Asian diaspora? Going back to the so-called motherland, going back to Asia, what does that experience look like? So there are still so many small pockets of Asian experiences that are yet to be represented on major titles in Hollywood. So I'm really hoping that more of these stories will be represented, and eventually Asian stories are not just seen as Asian stories, you know. So yes, I would say some of the biggest challenges that still exist would be perhaps the misconception that, you know, Asian content is just a trend. All right, next question. Ooh, wow. Okay. What's one Asian stereotype that actually applies to you? Yeah, I mean, I do agree that not all stereotypes are wrong. There are some very positive stereotypes about Asians as well. And this one could be cliche, but I think I deserve that stereotype as well. I would say maybe one stereotype about Asians that applies to me would be hardworking, because I do work hard. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Okay, one last question, because I'm getting hungry. Ooh. Why did you start Proudly Asian? Oh my god, girl! This is going to be an episode if I have to answer this in detail, but let me try to answer this quickly. So Proudly Asian started in the middle of the global pandemic when we saw a lot of Asian hate going on around the world, of course, and it was the right time to start the podcast because we thought it was the moment for us to really challenge those harmful, very persistent stereotypes and misconceptions about the Asian communities around the world. For example, just think like, where are you really from? You speak good English for an Asian. Chinese people eat dogs, you know, those kinds of stereotypes. A lot of people would say they were jokes, but during the global pandemic, as we saw it, those stereotypes were not just jokes. They became very harmful, very violent for the Asian communities around the world. So we thought it was the right time for us to start this podcast, to start breaking those biases. So That was the very beginning of Proudly Asian. And eventually our mission has evolved as we grew the podcast, as we grew the community as well. We learn a lot from our guests and from our communities around the world. So, currently our core mission is to really show the world that cultures do not divide people. Cultures bring people together. We can always learn to appreciate someone else's culture, even if we're not born into it, because cultural appreciation can be learned and language ability can be acquired. We are never born with all the languages that we speak. And also not everyone speaks the languages of their own cultures. All of these are learned, acquired. So if I can do it, you can do it as well. So now our focus is really to sort of not just reach out to the Asian communities around the world, but also the non-Asian communities who would like to just make connections, who would like to learn from each other and just celebrate cultures together. So this is my best effort to try to answer this question in hopefully less than 5 minutes. And that's all for this Ask Me Anything segment. Those were great questions, and if we have more questions coming in, we'll do more of that in the future. But without further ado, I think would be nice for us to walk down the memory lane and just to listen to some of the highlights from the previous season, season 5, that happened mostly in 2024. So enjoy.
I was interning for the Philippine Star, which is a newspaper in the Philippines. There was like these really, really old Pinoy guys chain smoking cigarettes. Like, they'd covered the army and the PMP like for years, and they just saw me and they're like, oh, this is just an American on a joyride, like back to the homeland, and she's just gonna just take this experience and then go back to America where she's comfortable. So they didn't really take me seriously then, because they were like, oh, she's just American. She's not Filipino. She doesn't really know what it's like. And they're not wrong. Growing up in the Philippines is not my lived reality. I had never done that before. I don't know what it's like to grow up as a Filipino in the Philippines, but it doesn't mean that I don't deserve a spot or space in the Philippines. And same thing in the US. Like, even though I'm not a white person, I'm not, a quote-unquote American in that way, I still deserve to be there as well.
There's a point where I wish I'm not Asian when I was young. Especially when I learned English when I was so young, and then you see people going to international school and having drama in the school, and then seeing those white kids having privileges, and then especially when you do drama, and then you kind of not be favored and employed as a proper counterpart. I wish to wake up and, oh yeah, I'm not Asian anymore. But like gradually when I learn about my culture, when I grow up as a person, I kind of love the fact that I am Asian. Like, I think there's a lot of flavors in our Asian culture. And not only in terms of food, but like in terms of like personality, culture, the way we interact with each other. And now I'm really bonded with this group of refugee ladies that are mostly Filipino, and the fact that I can bond with them and dance with them and eat food together and talk about different things together, it's just so warm to the heart. The same feeling that you feel like that is what humanity is. That is what like human relations are like. And I think like in Asia, we value that a lot. And I'm proud that I'm Asian and I have that part in me.
Growing up, a lot of the times you look around and you're kind of the outsider, right? And you wonder why, like, you don't have a name like, that's American. Well, now I have, a very Americanized name, but growing up, you speak another language and because Korean was actually my first language, even though I was born and raised here. Because my family spoke Korean, and I was sort of thrown into school without speaking a lick of English. And so now that I'm older, I really do appreciate, being Asian and having the qualities of Asian people who are generally just very, respectful and kind. And I'm really proud of that.
Growing up as Asian, we have a lot of, kind of limitation. Like we Asian people really cares about what other people think. So we sort of limit our choices, within like a very small boundary, whatever that is being, we think is approved by others. We sort of act in a way that kind of like we acting in a very small circle, I was actually really proud of how like the person that I have become now, even though I grew up with all this limitation, but I think it also grounds me, But I felt like I was quite motivated all the time because my parents didn't allow me to fail.
I mean, to you personally, what does it mean to be proudly Pakistani?
I think it means taking the good things of your culture with you wherever you go. I specifically chose this outfit for today. These earrings are from Pakistan, these clothes are from Pakistan. I proudly wear shalwar kameez all around the city. So I wear my culture everywhere I go.
What can an immigrant do to kind of overcome those biases or discriminatory or microaggressions, really? I think you just have to know who you are. You have to be rooted in who you are. And if you're an immigrant with an accent or speaking Tagalog or eating food with your hands, or you have to just stick with it and stand up for it, be proud of it, instead of hiding or being timid or because you don't speak as well or you can't express yourself that well. So I think that's, this isn't just for Filipinos, of course. This is across the board. I think you can't deny your heritage. You have to embrace it.
I feel like being proud must be rooted in community, in a sense of not just being proud for myself, not just standing up for myself, but standing up for people like me and standing up for people who are marginalized and taken advantage of, who might not even be like me, but might come from experiences where they're being oppressed. Like, that's what it means to be proud, especially being gay and being Asian. It's like, to be proud of that, I have to stand up for myself when I'm feeling like I'm being unfairly taken advantage of. And I have to stand up for other people who are in that same situation.
Yes.
Because how can I say that I'm proudly Asian if I'm not also standing up for people who are very like me or in situations like me, who might be from other Asian countries or from different backgrounds in Asia.
Or even not being Asian.
Or even not being Asian, right?
It only takes one person. It only takes one person to make your experience good or make your experience bad, and you don't even need to be part of the community. But you could be that one person that can help the Asian or the LGBTQ plus community member to feel welcome in Asia or wherever you may be. And that's all it takes. It really just takes one person.
And that person does not even have to be like Asian, but
No.
It could be anyone from any ethnicity, any backgrounds, and just, be that person who opens doors for people.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be Pride Month as well. Just be nice to people, be welcoming to people, and make people feel like at home.
When we hear people having mental health issues or diagnosis or problems, why don't we try to have more information and find out a bit more before labeling them crazy? Because imagine if you know what had happened to them and imagine what that happened on you, would you think you are crazy to have the same reaction as them?
Just emotional intelligence is a practice. It's like if you haven't done something ever in your life, like really opening up to someone or, even crying in front of someone or just expressing something very real, it's going to feel incredibly difficult. And that's actually okay. That's actually incredibly normal. I want men out there to know that this is a skill that you can develop. And I know how hard it can be at the start, right? To look someone in the eye for the first time and say, I feel very afraid right now. I don't know what's going to happen. I feel uncertain, right? As men, oftentimes we're rewarded for putting up this front of, yeah, don't worry, I got it all together. There's power in showing up and being vulnerable sometimes, right? Being like, I actually don't know the answer.
But at the end of the day, if we keep raising kids to don't talk back, never disagree with me, then how are they supposed to be able to advocate for themselves? How are they supposed to be able to make a mistake and move on from that? Because otherwise, they're just thinking, oh, I've made a mistake, devastating. Make sure I hide it from my parents so they never know. Like when you're really harsh to your kids, you're not really teaching them anything apart from hide your mistakes better next time. Because if mom finds out, there's hell to pay. And if we extrapolate that, the things that we prize in adults, speaking up for yourself, advocating for others, we don't prize in childhood. But how are kids supposed to learn how to do all those great things later in life if they're not practicing it now?
I think usually for neurodiversity, there's a misconception that if you're neurodivergent, say, if you're autistic, if you're ADHD, if you're dyslexic, you're unlikely to get good school results. But in reality, it's not necessarily the case. For example, I know ADHDs working as lawyers. I also learned that autistic individuals get degrees from top universities, have PhD in specific field.
People normally don't realize that we are code switching.
Yes.
Because whenever you enter a room, you quickly read, this is the crowd that I'm with. So I will tweak my accent or tweak my communication pattern in this way so it fits in better.
Yeah.
And normally people would just take it from face value as in that's just who you are.
When I'm around British friends or if I'm in the UK, I feel like they wouldn't understand me if I spoke like this. I'd say the accent I'm working with right now is just a relaxed. People say it sounds very transatlantic or Canadian or sometimes Australian, which is weird.
In Hong Kong, they call it international. Right?
International. But when I go to the UK or I'm around British friends, it will suddenly change and I'll start speaking like this all the time. So maybe I should just speak the rest of this episode in this accent. And who am I?
I used to hear this all the time as a kid. And it was and I made a painting about it recently. And it's the phrase is人見人愛車見車載. But then there's also a second part that's棺材見到打開蓋. Do you know that last part? So it's when everyone sees you, they love you. When cars see you, they want to pick you up. And then the last one is even when the coffin sees you, they want to open up the lid. Oh yeah.
So I'm just wondering if people in Kazakhstan see themselves as Asian,
Actually, I have never thought about this question. Maybe for the past year, I think. I've just started to mention that when Asians started to get some awards, for example, in Oscar and so on, I felt how Kazakhs, people in Kazakhstan, they also feel related to this. They feel that, wow, Asians, go Asians. So that's why I would probably say yes. Most of us feel like Asians.
To you, what does it mean to be proudly Asian?
To be authentic.
I rather lose friends than losing myself.
It's very nice to be with you on this podcast because it's something that I didn't, like I said, address when I was younger or teenager, and maybe things would have been experienced differently if I kind of had more thoughts about it or more connected to people who were with a similar story or just were different, right? So to me, it was also important to be on this podcast to reach out to others who might be like that. as well. And I'm super proud of all my Asian sides, like the good and the bad sides. And like I'm really annoying to my husband who's British, because I have so many weird Asian habits. And I'm obsessed with food, and I always need to have food in my bag, and I need to drink hot water and all of these things.
And rice.
And rice needs to be cooked in a rice cooker, otherwise it's not real rice. But I'm really grateful that my parents taught us like some really good, some really interesting traditions about us, our culture, whether it's Hakka or Chinese or Tahitian. So this is being proud of who you are as you are, right? Even if you're different.
There was a time when I was like really scared to go out of the house because there were just all these like attacks on Asian people, and I basically hid inside my apartment for like 2 weeks unless one of my 6-foot-tall children would escort me around. I would not go out of the house. But then, I have this large platform on Instagram at Conscious Cooking, and I'm quite connected with people in Chinatown and professionals and stuff. And I was like, well, I need help. I know I'm not the only one who feels that way. So I basically set up like 2 weeks of just live interviews, like Instagram live sessions with people talking about self-defense, people talking about self-care, people talking about mental space, and even just talking about tea and like all these like things that people could just kind of relate to, our community could relate to. And so that's when I really started like really amplifying and being proudly Asian, because I'm not gonna hide in the shadows, and we shouldn't have to hide in the shadows.
And there's only one of you. You are limited edition. Did you realize that? You can't be replicated like a character, like a Chinese character. Like you can write the same Chinese character 10 times, but each of them is unique. You will never write that stroke like that ever again. So there you go.
All right. Wow. It's so nice to be listening to all the special moments that we had in season 5. And it's always sort of, whenever I edit this or whenever I go back and select some of these moments, it always reminds me that we really did go through a lot. We grew a lot together on Proudly Asian. So once again, thank you so much for listening to the show, and I hope that you will continue to stick around with us in the coming year. And now, as I wrap up this episode, just want to quickly get you up to speed with what to expect in the year to come, especially season 6, which is coming. So we will officially kick off season 6 next Wednesday, which should be February 26th. Yes, so for the coming season, we will be releasing our episodes every other Wednesdays. So do stay tuned for a very special episode coming up, and it's going to be a very funny, inspiring, and also unfiltered conversation on the way. I can't wait for you all to listen to that episode. So with that, that's the end of episode 100. I kept to the basics, and I hope you enjoyed it. And yes, once again, we're back, and happy birthday to Proudly Asian. We are 3 years old, and hopefully there will be many, many more milestones to come. And once again, thank you so much for staying until the end with us. Yes, I can't wait to speak to you all soon. Until then, take care and love you. Bye. That's it for this episode of Proudly Asian. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at proudly.asian for more content. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and signing off for now. I'm Isabel Wong.